If you've ever wanted to know about the inside of the television business, you're going to learn about it tonight. Innovative television and film producer. He has a new series this fall on Fox, Dick Wolf. Stay with us. He is best known as creator and producer of the highly acclaimed television drama, Law and Order. I love this show. My guest has also produced and written several feature films and is breaking ground this September with TV's first minority cop show, Dick Wolf. I hardly know where to start, but minority cop show. Why would you do that? I mean, no cop precinct has only. Yeah, why did your father ask it? No, it crossed my mind. Like, it doesn't.
It's basically a buddy cop show, and one is black, one is Puerto Rican.
But there are Caucasians in the series.
Yeah. Patty Darbanville is the lieutenant who is in charge. No, it reflects the actual makeup of the NYPD. There are obviously black and Hispanic cops, about actually 30%, I think, of the force and combined. Right. So it's not out of the realm of possibility, and it's actually what they would like to have more of in the inner city, because white cops are not the way to solve crimes in Harlem.
Well, I don't want to comment on that. Mayor Giuliani was here last night. Do you get any help from the police department?
The police department, Phil Maldonado is lieutenant in charge of the SOD, which is the Special Operations Division, which handles all the film and TV work in the city, is terrific. I mean, the people in that unit are very helpful. They do impossible things for us on the street in terms of crowd control and traffic control. They're always cooperative. The city has been fantastic since the show got here.
The cops get a bad rap in some ways because there's been this internal investigation in the police department and so on. But my experience with them and my experience in politics was that the cops, that's a horrible way to live, and they don't get paid well enough to do what they do.
No, it's a terrible job, and in New York there are 33,000 cops, and they indicted 20 of them.
Yeah, I mean, 20 out of 33,000. But that's the headlines, and that's the big deal. Is there resistance in the minority community toward the police? A lot of them see, okay, 20 cops got arrested, so all cops are bad, so therefore I can do it, kind of thing.
I don't think it's that so much as the fact that the minorities have been, for better or worse, the policing in the inner cities has not been stellar over the past 60 years. We're not talking 6 months or 6 weeks or 6 years. It's a history of white cops have not been able to deal with minorities on an effective basis for obvious reasons. They are seen more as an occupying power force than somebody who is there to
grew up in the community and understands the community and so on. That's very interesting. Law and Order. Let's go back to Law and Order, because it really is one of my favorite shows. Now, that show, I recognize, and I like the sort of formula of that show. There is a formula to it.
Absolutely.
Describe the formula.
The first half of the show is really a police investigation. It's a cop show. The second half of the show is a legal show, so that within an hour you've really got what would be the equivalent of an hour cop show and an hour law show, because we don't go home with them. We are completely a story-driven show. The play is the thing. The actors service the material, basically, rather than go in the opposite direction, which is what most television shows are, which are focused on the characters. I mean, that's the network note all the time.
How did you get into the thing with Janet Reno? Why you? I mean, it was suddenly your show, and you were. It wasn't that violent a show.
No, it was. That's one of the big misconceptions that everybody that was on this violence on television kick a year ago, if you've noticed, as all things political, as you're aware, has now gone into.
They got their headlines.
Absolutely.
The politicians got their headlines, and so they moved on.
They moved on, but it caused a huge ruckus because they got headlines for so long that, unlike, you know, the last, it's a 20-year cycle. The last one, I can't remember who did the hearings 20 years ago, and then there were hearings in the early 50s. It's always the same thing. People come out, they get headlines, but blaming television for what's wrong with this country, and having congressmen and senators saying that if we can get a handle on television violence, when in actual fact, on the 4 commercial networks, there is not one show that would be deemed even marginally violent in primetime television anymore.
Yeah, so somebody said, think how bad Al Capone would have been if he'd have seen violence on television.
That's right.
I mean, this guy did it without that.
It's amazing that they pick this as a target when they do nothing about gun control, drug control, or the big problems underlying the economic infrastructure of the inner cities, which is totally falling apart.
Michael Moriarty, who I consider to be one of our finest actors,
absolutely.
I think he's a terrific actor, feels screwed because he got into the meeting with Janet Reno. He was an artist. He wasn't a businessman. He suddenly felt that the administration was trying to censor him as an artist, that they were leaning on you guys, that the television guys rolled over, that he himself blames himself with deep anger for rolling over in that meeting and not standing up and screaming at the Attorney General, which probably would have been embarrassing to you.
Well, no, but counterproductive. I mean, the fact is that it was not a what I can describe as a pleasant evening in Washington. I mean, I don't think anybody at the dinner was knocked out by some of the ideas expressed by the Attorney General.
What was the most stunning thing she said to you?
Well, I think the most stunning thing was basically a feeling that if we didn't improve, or if there was not a noticeable improvement, the government would have to step in and legislate some kind of censorship, whatever other word you use. She was talking about some form of censorship, and to me that was very disturbing to see a member of the executive branch talking about legislation that was going to be formulated. I mean, she's there to carry out the law, not to make new law, was my understanding of her fiat.
Well, my experience is the Hollywood crowd, and you may be part of that, has always been very liberal.
I'm from New York.
Oh, you are, yeah. Well, you moved to Hollywood. But has always been very liberal. They backed Clinton, they supported Clinton. He might not have made it to the presidency without Hollywood, without the liberals, without the people who are creating these programs. Did this stun them in some way? Did they feel they had their hand bitten? Did it make them a little less liberal?
I don't know if it made them a little less liberal. I don't know. You've spoken to Michael. I don't think it's made him any less liberal. I don't, at the same time...
Oh, it has. He says that he used to be a classic liberal on all points. Now he's a libertarian. He says, you know, freedom is freedom, and when the executive branch begins to... You know, it was okay as long as they were just taking it away from conservatives. But then when they started taking it away from liberals, the liberals said, wait a minute.
Look, this is really a question of what steps anybody is going to be comfortable with the government taking. I'm not comfortable with the government acting in loco parentis for me and telling me or telling my children that certain things are going to be forbidden. I think that as parents, we have a right and a responsibility to control our children's viewing. And the big argument, the countervailing argument, is that that doesn't happen in the inner cities. That's why we need warnings. And it was such circular logic that it amazed me at the time it was proposed, because what they're saying is that the people we have to protect are the latchkey children who are unsupervised. So why do you put a warning on a show for an unsupervised child and then put it in the papers that this is an exceptionally violent program if they're being unsupervised? It's like a roadmap to go to see what they're not supposed to watch.
I know. It's like putting sex on cable at night and then going out for dinner. What do you think, the kids are going to watch Bambi?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's no lockout. I mean, they've got a channel changer. They're going to go watch what they want.
We have a clip here. I want to show this clip because I talked to Michael. I'm not sure what clip I'm showing, but I know he's upset because he's upset. Michael's upset. You know. Roll that tape. We'll take a look at it and comment on it. You, Janet Reno.
Yeah, boundary. She stepped over it.
Tell me what happened. You got called in. You were in Law and Order. They were talking about violence in television. Yeah. They sent you in there to be a nice guy.
Why I was sent, I shouldn't have been there. I'm an artist. There's no reason they should have brought an artist in that meeting. And they were all CEOs and executives and producers and directors.
They thought you were going to act very sensible and
they figured I was window dressing. I'm the star, and then, you know, I won't, you know. But you can't talk about censoring an artist. And the other infuriating thing about it, telling the American public that what they want, they can't see. Saying that you know better for the American public. When the ratings say one thing and the Attorney General doesn't like it and says, no, they shouldn't have what they wanted. NYPD Blue, they shouldn't have, and they voted for NYPD Blue. If they do that, can't they do the same thing about a presidential candidate and say, the country voted for this person, but he really is wrong for you?
What do you think?
Well,
you agree with him?
Let me put it this way. I agree with a lot of his sentiments. I totally disagree with Michael's methodology in terms of handling it.
Yeah, but he spoke up. He told the truth. He said how he felt.
You saw where he, you know, no, there's nothing wrong with that.
It hurt his career. What you're saying is you wouldn't hire him again.
No, I never said that. Michael resigned.
I know, but would you hire him again?
Under certain circumstances, if the role was right for Michael. Michael is one of the great American actors of his generation. He was nominated for an Emmy every year he was on the show.
He's a great actor.
There's no question.
He also is a great guy. I went out to dinner with him. He's fun to be with. He's a Renaissance guy. I love his music.
He's an enormously talented individual.
But he's a pain in the ass, is what you're saying.
No, I didn't say that.
But that's what you think.
No. What Michael, any actor who is in a show at some point
has to shut up.
No, is going to be a pain in the ass. It's a given. That's part of the job.
That's true. I know.
That's part of the job. That's you put up with it, or you ignore it, if you will, when you have an actor of his range and ability. I mean, it's not as if he was a monster.
So he did not hurt his career, yes or no?
I don't know. I think he probably has hurt his career.
Okay, we'll be right back with the creator and executive producer of Law and Order, Dick Wolf. Stay with us.
Around my way, we didn't hang with blacks, they didn't hang with us. So what am I doing with a black partner? I grew up and smartened up. Because I know when something goes down, he's got my back, and I got his. It's called trust. How you living?
Hey, I got to tell you, I hate to make Rupert Murdoch more money. I hate to plug a Fox show. The guy's rich enough, let's be honest. Although I'd never know where he gets his money, because everything he does, they say he's losing money. Like he bought the NFL, he's losing money. He's got Fox stations, he's losing money. Somewhere, there's a room full of money, and Rupert's got the key. But anyway, this is a good show. The premise of A Puerto Rican and Black, is there a natural affinity for Puerto Ricans and blacks to work together, or a natural hostility?
A natural, I think that there initially is like most mixed marriages, there is a initial, resistance to getting into that type of relationship. Most white cops would prefer to partner with a white cop. Most black cops would.
How do the two actors, black and Puerto Rican, feel about a white boss? You?
Well, that's at the press tour. Because some of the critics who had seen the pilot, who were of our generation, let's put it, said, well, we couldn't understand a lot of the dialogue. And I said, well, you understood what was going on. Yeah, but some of the words, I said, with all due respect, it's not geared at your demographic. And they said, well, with all due respect, you're not exactly the hippest guy in Hollywood. And I said, well, luckily I have a writing staff that is literally all minorities. It's three Hispanics, 3 blacks. They're all under probably 31 or 32. They're pretty hip.
How violent is the series?
Not violent. It's one of the proudest things that everybody associated with Law and Order is proudest of is the fact that in 4 years and now 5, the cops have never fired their weapons. I'd love to get through 5 years on this show where these guys never shoot anybody, because they are supposed to be role models. They're young. They are of a different color, and they're carrying guns and badges. And what we would like to come away from with this is that the police solution to every problem isn't to blow you away.
Although there are many Americans today with crime out of control who believe the police should use their weapons more frequently.
Until somebody gets shot.
Yeah, and then they turn on him. That's true. Then the poor guy goes down. If he draws his weapon, he's 30 days suspension, and he has to defend himself.
He has to defend himself.
But that's how cops get killed, because they slow down in those circumstances.
Yeah, but there is, again, they're out on the street to do a job. They're better trained, hopefully, than the people they run up against. And the fact is that you don't hear of many cops being killed in shootouts. When it gets to a shootout, the cops usually are a lot better shots. They're not holding their guns sideways.
Yeah. Yeah, that's always funny how they draw and fire. If you've ever fired a pistol, you've got to be fairly close.
Yeah.
And not nervous at all.
And not nervous, and have good body position and a good hold on the weapon and everything else.
Right.
And police are much more instinctive about getting themselves in a position where the bullet will go where it's supposed to than...
It's also non-habit forming to have someone else firing at you while you're trying to do this. That's really a
But it really, I think most cops would agree that it is not a situation where they're killed in shootouts. They're killed with people in a traffic stop. You walk up to the car and somebody, has a gun and fires out the window.
One of the most intriguing things about the new series is one of my favorite singers. Gladys Knight is in this as an actress. Is she singing?
She sings too. I mean, my partner in the show is Andre Harrell, who is the president of Uptown Records, which is the biggest black label since Motown. And one of the reasons that Fox, I think, got excited about the show was that it's double-gated. There is a very good cop show going on here, but as most cop shows have a cop bar or someplace where they relax, the place they go to is a club called Natalie's, which Gladys Knight owns, and has guest stars of quite an exalted order, actually.
Give me some names of artists who will appear and sing.
Teddy Prendergast in the first show.
Pretty good.
Bobby Womack in the second episode. Al Green.
See, I'm of the era that loved that sound. I grew up with Motown, and I worked with the Supremes and the Temptations and people like that back in the early days of television. And I think when rap music came along, it killed a lot of good black music.
Well, it's we're trying to give a broad enough
you're bringing
spectrum.
it back.
Well, it's going to have hip hop. It's going to have rap. It's also going to have.
Don't have too much of that.
No, not too much rap.
Because you've got to get some mainstream audience here. And I'll be honest with you, nobody understands it.
No, it's what I said
nobody
to Andre.
understands. That
was one of my hip white guy statements to Andre. I said,
well,
look, anytime we use rap, I gotta hear the lyrics.
I have threatened to go out on the road as Vanilla Iceberg personally, because it takes no talent to do this. I could do this, and but have music. I mean, some of that great music. Gladys Knight is sensational.
There's some great music in the show, and basically what they're going to be doing, what these guest artists are going to be doing, will be covering great R&B songs from the past.
So will gunfire break out during these songs or anything?
No,
I mean,
no.
it's just like
it's a club, it's a venue that they go in and
it's like the old Peter Gunn series. He used to go to Moms. And huh?
Very good.
How's that? Was it late 50s, early 60s?
Early 60s.
You're too young for that.
Oh, I wish I was.
People think you just like got up one day and got to be a television producer, and they always say, you know, how did he get into that? What kind of gig? I mean, I'm stuck down here at the Dairy Queen. You were in advertising before, as a writer.
As a writer-producer, I made commercials. You
made commercials. What were some of the commercials? Would people recognize these commercials?
Oh,
today?
Sure. I'm Cheryl, Fly Me.
I'm Cheryl, Fly Me. Hey, today, that's immediate sexual discrimination. That's immediately going to prison.
Enough,
7 years.
Interestingly enough, I think it was at the time one of the most successful airline campaigns ever, because it was aimed at,
I'm Cheryl, Fly Me.
It was aimed at businessmen, and all the stewardesses were from the University of Florida and were 22 years old. That's why they flew the airline.
I'm surprised that didn't end your career. If this gets out...
Valerie Solanas came into the woman who shot Andy Warhol and threw ink all around the offices were, at that time. So it was an interesting period of...
Well, we're talking with Dick Wolf. Do we have one more segment with him? That's great. Let's do it. We'll be right back. Stay with us. We've got some more interesting things to talk about. We're back with television producer Dick Wolf. We were talking about Moriarty a few minutes ago, and I think he really did believe that what happened is he embarrassed you, and he embarrassed the network with the people in Washington, and they were sort of embarrassed that he spoke up, and so they began to write him out of the show or screw him a little bit on his lines and cut back on the part. Now, did you do that to him? You did not do that.
No, this was what was so strange about receiving the letter of resignation, because we had talked the day before about this specific script. I said, Michael, this is one of 88 shows. The cops are in 3 acts of it for the first time, but you've been in all 4 acts of the show in several scripts. It's never been a problem. This was their show. This was designed long before this was in work before we ever went to Janet Reno. How could you think that I could, get something written and up that would write you out of the show? You are half the show. How could I possibly write them out? It didn't track logically to me.
But sometimes actors are concerned about how much they're in a
yes,
they're in a script. Am I right?
Absolutely.
They do actors read the whole script, or they read their part?
Well, there's a very famous there's a very famous rendition of how stars read scripts.
You have to widen out here. Show this. Show how they do it.
They pick up a script, they start going through it, and then, first of all, if they're not on the first 2 pages, they get upset, but then they'll go through.
Widen out.
And you'll see them, they'll be going, bullshit, bullshit, my line. Bullshit, 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 my line. Bullshit, my line.
So if it isn't my line, it's bullshit.
Well, that's unfair, because in most of, that it gets to that point with some actors, but in Law and Order, we've gotten away from that. There is a table reading, a theatrical table reading for every episode, the same, and we do it on New York.
So you read in character, you sit around the table?
You sit around the table, it's just like a theater run-through, and everybody reads their part, and then they get a chance, they say, gee, I hate this line, okay, we'll change that line, or no, you have to say that line because that leads into something in Act 3, and that's where the actors get their shot at the script, and that's because it's so expensive and so time-consuming. The idea is that we have this meeting, everybody sits around, everybody gets what they don't like out, their bitches out, the script then goes through another rewrite with those having what's been agreed to be addressed, and then we don't stop on the set. You don't say, well, my character wouldn't say this. Well, you had a chance to say your character wouldn't say it, he's going to say it now.
Now it's too late. I've worked as a producer and a director and a mostly comedy writer, but I have found the hardest part of our business is getting all of our egos into the room at the same time.
Oh, that's...
Because every actor I ever met wants to be a singer, and every director wants to be a producer, and every writer thinks he's a comedy writer, and every comedy writer thinks he can write drama, and everybody thinks he can act. Isn't that the biggest crisis?
That's what we try to keep the lines of communication clear on these shows by, you know, we've had those discussions. The idea is that the writers write, the directors direct, the producers produce, and the actors act. And they're only getting paid to do one thing, so why would they possibly want to do more?
I talked to Paul Sorvino. He said people are still angry at him for leaving the show.
Well,
is that true?
I'm sure Paul's fans were disappointed.
Did you fire him or did he quit?
No, I've never fired anybody from the show. That's not true. I mean, Dan Florek and Richard Brooks were basically legislated out of the show by NBC, which is something that I can't, in hindsight, say that Warren was wrong. I mean, he wanted more women in the show from the very beginning. Finally, after the 3rd season, he said, look, you got to do this or I have to move you. Which the move would have been to Friday at 10, which would have shot the show in the head, so it would have been academic if I hadn't put women in the show. But the show is up 11% last year, so I can't say that that was a terrible thing for him to have legislated. I never would have done it myself.
Yeah, Warren's a talented guy. The Stephen Bochco, creator of what? Hill Street Blues and NYPD Blue,
Law and Order.
Some say very difficult to work with, out of control on budgets, egomaniac. Others say biggest talent in television. Where is he?
Talent. Look, he's, for better or worse, he is the seminal force behind what became the adulting of primetime television. Hill Street Blues was one of the few true watershed shows in the history of the medium. I mean, it changed the way drama was done at 10 o'clock. And NYPD Blue is enormously popular. I mean, Dennis Franz is one of my favorite actors in the world. I'm so thrilled for him that this has happened, but Stephen's shows are a lot more expensive than mine. I mean, that's just, he spends more money. They give him more money.
What does it cost to produce a single episode of Law and Order?
Well, it's creeping up now in the 5th year towards close to $1 million. It's in the $1.4 million range. But
for an hour?
For an hour. But that's very cheap for a 5th year show.
And Bochco's NYPD Blue, what's that cost for an hour?
Well, the budget, the figure that I heard was $1.6 million the first year.
Really?
So that's a big...
Now, how much of that is actors' salaries and how much of it is other stuff?
I don't know. I don't see his budgets.
Normal percentage of actors, what do you look at?
I think the above the line is usually, you know, you're trying to keep it at about 1/3 of the total cost. Mm-hmm. But he has very expensive people working there too.
Do you miss advertising? Would
No.
you like to do another advertising campaign once in your life?
Well, I'm getting, basically that's why I like doing new shows too, because you are involved with
marketing
and promotion and the advertising, and you know, it's been very gratifying because Fox keeps you involved and NBC has always let me be involved in the planning of this stuff. So it's more than keeping your hand in. You've got a very vested interest in making it work.
What's your single talent? What is the single talented guy needs to do what you do for a living?
Picking people.
Picking people. Getting good people.
I'm not the guy out there picking the locations, you know, figuring out how much we can spend on art direction in this specific episode. I mean, it's picking the producers and the writers and the actors.
How much, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much crap will you take for a guy if he's talented?
An enormous amount.
A 9.5.
Yeah.
Okay. Dick Wolf?
Maybe an 11 if he's really good.
Okay, thanks a lot.